الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عم يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون. كلا سيعلمون ثم كلا سيعلمون. ألم نجعل الأرض مهادا والجبال أوتادا وخلقناكم أزواجا وجعلنا نومكم سباتا وجعلنا الليل لباسا وجعلنا النهار معاشا وبنينا فوقكم سبعا شدادا وجعلنا سراجا وهاجا وأنزلنا من المعصرات ماء ثجاجا لنخرج به حبا ونباتا وجنات ألفافا. إن يوم الفصل كان ميقاتا يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا وفتحت السماء فكانت أبوابا وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا. إن جهنم كانت مرصادا للطاغين مآبا لابثين فيها أحقابا لا يذوقون فيها بردا ولا شرابا إلا حميما وغساقا جزاء وفاقا. إنهم كانوا لا يرجون حسابا وكذبوا بآياتنا كذابا وكل شيء أحصيناه كتابا فذوقوا فلن نزيدكم إلا عذابا. إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وأعنابا وكواعب أترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا. رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما الرحمن لا يملكون منه خطابا. يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا. ذلك اليوم الحق فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مآبا. إنا أنذرناكم عذابا قريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة.
Na bada do alam chale روتے سروں کو پیچھے پابند غم چلے زینب نے لاش سے کہا بھائی ہم چلے مرنے سے آپ کے میں یہ اٹھاتی ہوں دربار میں یزید کے سر ننگے جاتی ہوں پائی تمہاری دوری سے مر جائے گی بہار کیوں کر تمہاری لاش کو دفنائے گی بہار کاہے کو چھوٹ کے قید سے اب آئے گی بہار کس طرح آہ آپ کو اب پائے گی بہار ناچار قید ظلم میں یہ ستن چلی لو بھائی شیر شام کے جانب بہن چلی سونپا تجھے خدا کو اے زہرا کے گل عذار اس تیری بے کسی کو بہن ہو گئی نثار ہے یہ ریت گرم ہے گلشن بدن فگار یہ حال کے نازنی تیرا اور سے کے آبدار گردن کٹا کے بھائی بیاباں میں سو گئے غافل بہن سے آنک کے جنگل میں سو گئے اے میرے غریب میرے ملکہ حسین ہے میرے مسافر کرب و بلا حسین ہے تجھے نہ پانی کا قطرہ ملا حسین ہے تمام تن تیرا ٹکڑے ہوا حسین پیاسے گلے پہ خنجر بیدار چل گیا ہے طرف طرف کہ تیرا دم نکل گیا اے نواں علی کی بضاعت تجھے ملی اے کربلا خدا کی امانت تجھے ملی اے خاک میری ماں کی ریاضت تجھے ملی اے زمین شام امامت تجھے ملی دامن تیرا بڑا میری کھیتی اجڑ گئی سرحد میں تیری باعث زینب بچھڑ گئی ایک ایک سر کو پیٹ کے روئی وہ دکھ زری آ کر نہ جاؤ سے حال میرا دیکھو یا علی گردن ہماری ظلم کی رسی میں ہے بندی کیسی یہ ماریے سے وہ بیچس میں تر چلی پردیس میں ہی آ کے برادر سے چھوٹ گئی لوگوں میں کربلا معلی میں لوٹ گئی برحمت محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم
If you can please welcome Sayyidat al Salawat, wa Muhammad wa ali Muhammad Salawat.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. Just a little bit louder on the volume if you can. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين، والبراءة من أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا ابن رسول الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء، ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم، وأمن من لجأ إلى حصنكم، وفاز من والاكم وسار بنهجكم. فيا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected brothers and respected sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah greaten your reward for commemorating the martyrdom anniversary of our sixth Imam, Jafar ibn Muhammad and Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him. On this occasion, we extend our deepest condolences to the Imam of our time, the awaited Savior, Al-Hujjat al-Mahdi. May Allah hasten his glorious reappearance and grant us all the tawfiq to be among his devoted assistants and sincere and loyal companions. In this occasion, while we commemorate our sixth Imam, peace and blessings be upon him, I will highlight three major roles that he had performed to preserve the genuine message of Islam. Of course, each of our Imam was assigned different roles in accordance with the circumstances of their time. And during the life of our Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, there were several roles that he had to perform, among which were these three. The first of these major roles was to train and prepare scholars who specialize in different Islamic subjects, fuqaha and ulama. For example, we had ulama that were trained in theology, ulama that were trained in commentary of the Holy Quran, ulama that were trained in hadith sciences, and especially jurisprudence, which is the science or the study of deriving religious rulings from their reliable sources. And this raises a question in the minds of some people. Why would the Imam need to train scholars for the Shia to resort to and refer to in matters of religion when he, Imam Sadiq, the infallible, is there? If you had the option between going to Imam Sadiq and anyone else, of course you would not go to anyone else but Imam Sadiq. So why would the Imam Sadiq emphasize on the importance of this and give it a high importance and train different ulama and fuqaha? And there's different ways we can address this question, but I will address it through one here, or one answer I will provide. And that is, our Imams alayhimus salam wanted to prepare their followers and their Shia for the greater occultation. Our Imams knew that part of plan B, because we know there's plan A and plan B. Plan A was that Imam Ali alayhi salam would take the leadership and that we would not have to go through all the trouble that we had gone through for 1400 centuries. Plan B is that if the Ummah did not cooperate well and did not support the commander of the faithful, then of course Plan B is going to entail or include the issue of the ghaibah, the occultation to preserve the Imam, and for many other reasons. So the Imams had to prepare their Shia. They have to establish and set the grounds and set the building blocks for the Islamic seminary that will continue to preserve the genuine Sharia and the genuine message of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. So that is one. Now, something along the lines of this answer, or we can say that it probably a different answer, and that is the need. It was not practical for the Shia during the times of our Imams, peace and blessings be upon them, to reach the Imam whenever they needed to address their concerns. Those who live in Kufa, who come across a religious ruling, and as we know today, for example, here in America, in the US, we're always running into different issues and we want to know the Islamic ruling. What makes it easier here is that we have means of communication which make it fast, right, and simple. We can right away send an email or call Najaf or Qom if we had no scholars here and get the answer. But think about 13 or 1200 years ago where there was no means of communication. That person who is in Kufa has to travel all the way to Medina or has to send mail by someone which takes days until it comes back. So it would not be practical that Shia would remain like this, clueless and do not know the rulings and do not know their matters of religion until they meet the Imam. Add to that another thing, the Imams were not given the full freedom to be accessible to the Shia, especially the later Imams. We know that some of them were put under house arrest. Some of them, like our Imam Musa ibn Jafar al-Kadhim, peace be upon him, were prisoned. So therefore it was not practical that we say Shia can only resort to the Imam. If the Imam's not there, then they have to suspend their religion. So the Imams had to prepare their followers for this new era that will happen, which is the occultation, where there will be absolutely no access to the Imam. So therefore they established the school of Ahlul Bayt. Let's call it the University of Ahlul Bayt, Jami'at Ahlul Bayt, and it gave the best of its givings and produced the best ulama during the time of our Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now there are many ahadith by the A'imma, peace and blessings be upon them, that show the importance of the Shia, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, the importance of them emulating and resorting to ulama. Because today we see, unfortunately, there has been, different speakers or different people who come on different, platforms and social media and other channels to raise this question of, is taqleed really important? Is emulation important? We all have minds and we can just open the Holy Quran and take out the ruling from the Quran or from the Sunnah, from the traditions of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, and there's no need for fuqaha. And we find that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, although they were there, they emphasized and they stressed the importance that their ashab, their companions, who were well grounded and well versed in Islamic sciences and Islamic rulings, they needed to be a source of guidance for those who weren't. I'll quote one riwayah, for example, although this riwayah and this narration is in matters of qada, in matters of dispute among the Shia, but it gives the same meaning in the end, because if you need to resort to someone in matters of qada, then of course in other matters of religious law you still need to resort to someone to explain the ruling for you. One person known by the name of Umar ibn Hanbala, who was one of the ashab, and he came to our Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and says, and this riwayah is found in Al-Kafi and other sources of hadith as well, he says to him, "O my master, if two of the Shia have a dispute over inheritance or over a debt," and this happens, we're not perfect human beings, there's a dispute between time and time, where do we go? Can we go to the court? Because there was court during that time, ran by the Abbasid leaders, the non-Shia courts. And this applies to our time today as well, the answer that Imam will provide. Imam said it's absolutely unlawful. It is absolutely prohibited that you resort to any court. So he said, what should we do, O my master? In cases of dispute, in cases where someone's rights are usurped, what do we do? Where do we go? He says, Salamullahi alayhi, they must seek one from among you who has narrated our hadith and who is versed in what is permissible and what is forbidden, and who is well acquainted with our laws and ordinances, and must accept him as a judge, for I appoint him as a judge over you. From this hadith, our ulama have deduced that our imams have appointed fuqaha as judges. That is why when we have a dispute among us, between two people, between a husband and a wife, between family members about inheritance, we cannot rush directly to the secular court system. We need to go to the religious scholar, the wakil of the marja, to get the verdict. Now, yes, there are exceptions. When you know that you cannot retain or you cannot restore an usurped right through going to the religious authority because the other party does not respect and honor the religious authority, then you have no other option but to resort to the secular court. So that would be a case of idtirar, a case of necessity. Not that a husband and wife have a problem, they say, you know what, let's just take it to court. Two community members have a problem, say, you know what, let's take it to court. That is not permissible in Islam, and it is considered among the major sins that a lot of people do not pay attention to. Rather, they need to resort first to the religious authority if that did not solve the problem, because one of the parties says, you know what, I don't care what Islam says. Then at that point, you have a right that is usurped, and there's no other way that you can restore it. At that point, you would resort to the Islamic court. So this is one of the roles that our Imam had to perform during his time, is to prepare fuqaha, prepare ulama. One of the very prominent fuqaha and the best of the students of our Imam alayhi salam were Zurara ibn A'yan. A lot of our ahadith, when they are reported by Zurara, our ulama take them and accept them without any discussion, because Zurara was very, very reliable and very trustworthy of the companions of our Imam Sadiq, peace and blessings be upon him. Another role that our Imam, peace and blessings be upon him, had performed was to confront wrong ideologies, wrong beliefs, and unlawful methods of deducing Islamic laws. During his time, we know that many of the madhahib, the different Islamic sects, emerged on the surface. Not only that, but there were ideologies even from outside of Islam, like that of atheism. So the Imam had to stand and respond to these misconceptions and engaged in dialogue and debates with them. And this is another reason why he had trained fuqaha in theology like that, like Husham ibn al-Hakam, for example, a very young scholar from the companions of the Imam, who was very well versed in debates and speaking and arguing and matters of theology and matters of Islamic beliefs. So the Imam at this level and this role here, he had to stand in front of different types of ideologies, including the deviant beliefs that were being propagated within the Islamic circles, such as that of Jabr, predestination. There's a school that said that we and our actions are all created by Allah and we have no free will. And this, of course, is absolutely against our Islamic values or Islamic belief system. Because if we have no choice and free will in what we do, then why would Allah punish us? If Allah forces me to commit sin and I have no say, then why would Allah take me to punishment? So that is absolutely contrary to the adala of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Imam had to stand firmly and refute these kind of beliefs that were being spread and propagated within the Islamic circles. Another thing that our Imam had to do is stand in front of the unlawful methods of deducing. And I'll explain that and try to focus on it in this lecture, inshallah. We have a school that emerged during the time of Ahlul Bayt that was known as Madrasatul Ra'i, the school of opinion, which used qiyas, and I'll explain what qiyas is, as a method of deriving religious rulings. We know that in Islam, according to the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, the only sources of deducing Islamic law is the Holy Quran and the traditions of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Now this school, which one of its prominent scholars is An-Nu'man ibn Thabit, known as Abu Hanifa, the head of the Hanafi sect today in the Islamic world, he was the head, or he was one of the prominent scholars that promoted qiyas. Qiyas means analogy or means comparison. It could be different, translated in different words. And I'll give you an example of how qiyas works, but it's important that we understand there are different forms of qiyas, some of which are acceptable and some are not. And I'll give you two examples, very basic, that are not related to fiqh, and then I'll delve into some of the fiqh issues to explain how qiyas works. For example, if a person goes to the doctor, and the doctor does a diagnosis and they do an exam, and then they say to the patient, do not eat chocolate because it is sweet. And then this person goes home and he stops eating chocolate. And somebody comes to him, for example, with pancake or cheesecake. And he says, here, eat. He says, no, I can't eat it. He says, why? He says, the doctor says do not eat chocolate because it's sweet. He says, the doctor says do not eat chocolate but not cheesecake. He says, yeah, but he says the reason. He said, because it's sweet. Therefore, the problem is not chocolate, the problem is sweetness, sugar. And because cheesecake has sugar, therefore, I have to avoid it as well. Now this is qiyas. But this is valid qiyas. Why? Because it's based on ilm. Here the patient knew, because the doctor had told him the reason why you cannot eat chocolate is because of the sweetness. So therefore anything that has sweetness you cannot eat, because we have no problem with chocolate itself, but we have a problem with glucose or with sugar. The other example, a person goes to the doctor and the doctor says do not eat lemon, but he doesn't tell him the reason. This person goes home and his wife brings him, or their spouse, their husband or wife, whoever it is, or their child, brings them something yellow, a yellow fruit. Could be a yellow apple, for example, or whatever. And they say, I'm not eating this. Says, why? Says, the doctor said don't eat lemon. Says, the doctor says don't eat lemon, this is not lemon. Says, yeah, but this is yellow and lemon is yellow. The person would respond and say, how do you know the doctor forbids you from lemon because of its color? Maybe because of something else. The wrong qiyas is based on this. Is comparing something to something else and giving it the same ruling because it has similarities. And we don't know that these similarities are the reason or the very reason why this rule was legislated. Let me get into the fiqh example to make this a little bit more interesting, inshallah. If somebody has to do siyam, they miss their siyam and they have to make it up, can they observe a recommended fast or no? No, ahsant. According to Islamic law, if you have a missed fast, you need to make it up first, and then later on do what? Observe your recommended fast. Question, which is more important, salah or siyam? Salah is amududdin, the pillar of religion. Okay. Assuming we don't have an answer to this question that I will raise. We do, but assuming we don't, let's look at how qiyas will work. What if I have missed salah? and I want to pray a mustahab salah, observe Salatul Layl for example, or Salatul Ghufayla. According to Qiyas, I would say, well, if Siyam, you have to do the qada first before you can do a mustahab. And Salah is more important than Siyam, therefore, you are not allowed to do any mustahab salah unless you make up your previous. This is according to Qiyas. But we know for a fact this is wrong. Why? Because we do have narrations and adillah and rulings in Islam that say, in salah, if you have a missed qada salah, you can still do your mustahab salah and make up the salah later. You see how the rulings, each matter has a ruling in Sharia. You cannot compare. You can't say, well, salah is more important than siyam, and therefore it has to have this ruling. We call that qiyas. Abu Hanifa, the head of the school of qiyas with the wrong sense, because we said qiyas is of different forms. Now what's an example of qiyas that is correct? I'll give you an example, a practical example of qiyas that is correct, that ulama use. حُرِّمَتِ الْخَمْرُ لِإِسْكَارِهَا. Wine is prohibited because of its intoxication. Because of its intoxication. So is khamr haram because of its color? Remember the example of the chocolate and the lemon. Is khamr haram because of its taste? No, because of its iskar. So ulama say, okay, iskar is a problem. Sharia does not want us to be intoxicated. So now we have something called cocaine, heroin, whatever. And we have no ruling in Islam about these things. We don't have a specific ruling that says cocaine is haram. What do? Ulama say, well, since it has the aspect of iskar, intoxication, that it's haram. Say, but this is qiyas. Yes, but this is qiyas mansus al-illa, qiyas which the illa of is been said by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And therefore we can practice that qiyas and it would be acceptable. Whereas the other qiyas that Abu Hanifa uses is based on comparison without that type of foundation or the element of ilm, certainty in the illah, the reason behind the ruling. So Abu Hanifa enters into the gathering of Imam Sadiq, and this is reported in several of our sources, including Wasa'il al-Shi'a by Al-Hurr al-Amali. He says his salam and he sits, and our Imam alayhi salam says to him, he knows that he is the head of the qiyas. He says, "O Abu Hanifa, be pious of Allah and do not compare in matters of religion by your own opinion. Iblis was the first to compare." The Imam is telling him that the person who established qiyas in reality was Iblis. Where did Iblis practice qiyas or comparison? When Allah commanded him to prostrate down to Adam, what did he say? He did qiyas. He says, I am made from fire, he is made from clay. Fire is better than clay, according to Iblis, of course. Therefore, why should I prostrate down to him? So the Imam says, the first one to engage in qiyas, O Abu Hanifa, was Iblis. Be careful. He advised him, he admonished him, do not engage in qiyas. Then look at what the Imam told him. Pay attention to this question that Imam will raise to show Abu Hanifa how qiyas is invalid. He says to him, tell me, Abu Hanifa, which is more serious, murder or adultery? He says, murder, of course. That's taking the life of an innocent person. Of course, adultery is a major sin, but even more serious than that sin is killing. He says, okay, that's right. How come in order to prove adultery, which is less serious than murder, we need 4 witnesses, while to prove qatl, killing, we only need 2? According to your qiyas, it would be the other way around. Then he asked him, he says, Abu Hanifa, which is more important, salah or siyam? Prayer or fasting? He says, prayer. He says, how come the woman who is in her menstruation cycle, she does not have to make up her salah, which is more important than siyam, but she must make up siyam, which is less important than salah? According to your qiyas, it would be the other way around. And then the Imam started giving him different examples to illustrate that religion is not to be taken by opinion and qiyas, rather by sharia, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the authority to legislate, Muhammad and his progeny. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The third major role that I want to conclude with today is that our Imam trained not only fuqaha and ulama, but he trained and educated the general population of the Shia and instructed them to observe the loftiest of ethics and morals and to coexist with others who are of different schools in the best way they can. We have many traditions and many letters that Imam Sadiq had sent to his companions in this regard. One of them is recorded in Al-Bihar by Al-Majlisi. He says to the Shia, our Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, "O Shia, be an adornment for us, كونوا زينا لنا ولا تكونوا شيئا علينا, and do not be a disgrace for us. Say to people that which is good and guard your tongues from that which is evil." This is just one example of the many ahadith that our Imam Sadiq alayhi salam had instructed the Shia to observe when dealing with other people who differ from them in matters of religion or people who are of different Islamic sects. Not only that, our Imam embodied with his action the loftiest of ethics, the best of manners. He exercised the best level of pardoning and forgiveness and kindness and generosity. Shaykh al-Majlisi reports in Bihar that one day Sufyan al-Thawri, one of the non-Shia scholars, came to Imam Sadiq and he saw that he was very depressed. His colors were changed. And he says, "What's wrong?" Because Sufyan used to study under Imam Sadiq. A lot of the scholars that ended up making up their own madhahib were students of Imam Sadiq, including Abu Hanifa, according to some historical narrations. He says, "What is wrong? You look very depressed and very sad." He says, "Yeah, today something happened in my house." "What happened?" He said, "I had ordered the family and I had prohibited them from going up the stairs." Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam cared a lot about chastity, about iffah, and made sure that their women were always covered. He says, "I had told them not to go up the stairs. There's a ladder and they go up the stairs and stand on the sath, the surface of the roof of the house or the ceiling of the home." And he says, "While I was coming to enter, I saw the Jariya." Jariya was one of the servants of the Imam, carrying one of my children, a baby, who she was taking care of. And I saw her standing on the stairs on top, right by the surface. As soon as she saw me, she became frightened because I had prohibited them from doing so. And because she was scared, she dropped the baby and the baby died. And he said, "That's not what is bothering me, that the fact that the baby fell and died. What really broke my heart and bothered me is that I saw the fear of this woman, this servant, in her eyes when she saw me. I felt bad for this. This is why I'm depressed." This shows you the mercy of the Imam alayhi salam. That he was not very concerned. Yes, he was saddened that his son died because of this. But what broke his heart even more is that he saw fear in that woman's eyes, and he was the reason for that fear. Because, of course, unintentionally, he happened to come in and she happened to see him and she dropped the baby because she was afraid. So the Imam then, of course, told her, "Anti hurra li wajhillah." Not only did the Imam forgive her and not hold her accountable, he told her, "You are hurra, you are free for the sake of Allah." And back then, when you give hurriya, freedom, to a slave or a servant, it meant a lot, because there's a value for this servant if you were to sell them instead of give them hurriya. But Ahlul Bayt taught people to do that. I asked my master, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, "Oh my master, you saw the servant of yours in fear, and you became very depressed and very saddened. What would you do if you have witnessed the fear in the faces of your aunts in Karbala? Zainab, Kulthum, Sakina, Ruqayya. What would you say when you see the fear in the faces of the children of Imam Hussein when the tents were burning and they were running from one tent to the other? Oh my master, Imam al-Sadiq, what would you say if you see Zainab, Salamullahi alayha, and the sisters of Imam Hussein and the children being whipped and being hit by the enemies of Allah while they are running from one tent to the other. Oh my master, what would you say if you saw Lady Ruqayya when she was running and there was fire in her outer garment? Hamid ibn Muslim, one of the narrators that reported the history or some of the narrations of Karbala, he says, I saw a little girl running, and in the below of her outer garment there was fire, so I stopped her to stop the fire. Then I said to her, where are you from? Who is your family? Which one is your parents? She says, Ya Shaykh, have you ever read the Holy Quran? He says, yes, I have. She says, have you came across the ayah that says, فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ وَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ, and do not oppress the orphan? He says, yes, I have come across this verse. She says to him, I am the yatim of Abu Abdullah. I am the orphan of Hussein alayhi salam. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. Oh Allah, we ask you by the love of our Imams, we ask you to hasten the glorious return of our Imam al-Hujjah, peace and blessings be upon him, and grant us success and tawfiq to be among his followers and devoted assistants. Oh Allah, we ask you to give fast and speedy recovery for all those mu'mineen who are ill. Oh Allah, we ask you to fulfill our needs and hajat. Oh Allah, we ask you to forgive our sins and grant us the success to be among the best of your servants. Oh Allah, we ask you to bless and shower our marhumeen and all the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen who have left this world. Shower them with your mercy and blessings. Oh Allah, we ask you to give us the best of tawfiq to remain firm on the path of Ahlul Bayt. Let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha with Ikhlas 3 times and send its thawab to the honor of Ahlul Bayt, to all of our marhumeen, your marhumeen, and all the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen. But before that, a loud salawat.
काए जनाजा है इमाम जाफर सादिक काए जनाजा है इमाम जाफर सादिक काए जनाजा है यतीम हो गए अल्लाह मूसा काजिम यतीम हो गए अल्लाह है मूसा काजिम शफीक बाप का साया सरों से उठा है इमाम जाफर सादिक काए जनाजा है किया है जुल्म ने ज़हरे दगा से तुमको शहीद किया है जुल्म ने ज़हरे दगा से तुमको शहीद अभी भी सोग में डूबा हुआ मदीना है इमाम जाफर सादिक काए जनाजा है ہے زہرا مجتبی سجاد باقر و سادے، ہے زہرا مجتبی سجاد باقر و سادے، او پنجتن کی لحد سے سجا بقیا ہے، امام جعفر صادق کا یہ جنازہ ہے، سروں کو پیٹتے ہیں مومنین رو رو کر، سروں کو پیٹتے ہیں مومنین رو رو کر، امام دین کا امت سے ہائے بچھڑا ہے، امام جعفر صادق کا یہ جنازہ ہے، کچھ ایسے باپ کو ظالم نے تھا کیا زخمی، کچھ ایسے باپ کو ظالم نے تھا کیا زخمی، اسی طرح سے تمہیں بھی ستم نے مارا ہے، امام جعفر صادق کا یہ جنازہ ہے، عجیب دین پہ چھائی ہے بے بسی دیکھو، عجیب دین پہ چھائی ہے بے بسی دیکھو، کہ روح دین زمانے سے اب گزرتا ہے، امام جعفر صادق کا یہ جنازہ ہے، ظہیر درد میں ڈوبا ہے کنبے باقر، ظہیر درد میں ڈوبا ہے کنبے باقر، لبوں پہ جاری جو جاوید غم کا نوحہ ہے، امام جعفر صادق کا یہ جنازہ ہے، امام جعفر صادق کا یہ جنازہ ہے، صلوات پر محمد و آل محمد۔
زیارت۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد۔ السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین، السلام علیک یا فاطمۃ الزہراء سیدتی نساء العالمین، السلام علیک یا حسن المجتبی، السلام علیک یا حسین یا سید الشہداء کربلا، السلام علیک یا علی ابن الحسین و محمد ابن علی و جعفر ابن محمد و موسیٰ ابن جعفر و علی ابن موسیٰ و محمد ابن علی و علی ابن محمد والحسن ابن علی، السلام علیک یا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام علیک یا خلیفۃ الرحمن، السلام علیک یا کعبۃ الایمان، السلام علیک یا شریک القرآن، السلام علیک یا مظہر الایمان، السلام علیک یا امامنا و امام الانس والجان، عجل اللہ تعالی فرجک وسخر اللہ تعالی مخرجک وظہورک وجعلنا من انصارک ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، اللہم کل ولیک حجت ابن الحسن صلواتک علیہ وعلی آبائہ فی هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا وذليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات.
Inshallah, we have. If you could just start getting ready for namaz.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح هيا على خير العمل هيا على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما